Hey there, Black Sheep. Welcome back to the channel. As you probably noticed, I was gone for 2 weeks. That's because I was busy moving. I still have lots of unpacking to do, but I made sure I knew where my microphone was. I'm taking a break from that, so let's unpack this weekend's Watchtower. Before we get started, please give this video a like. It helps the information get out to more people. Also, if you're interested in channel updates or housekeeping, stay tuned until the last few minutes of this video. Without further delay, let's get into this week's episode of This Bites, a series in which we analyze the Watchtower and highlight how it implements the bite model. If you're unfamiliar with the bite model, it's the go-to method used to identify extreme control groups and cults, and the methods that they use to coerce, recruit, and maintain control of members. This weekend at a Kingdom Hall near you, Jehovah's Witnesses will be discussing study article number 24 of the June 2024 Watchtower Study Edition. The article is entitled, "Remain Jehovah's Guest Forever." The title is giving J.C. Dugard. Paragraph 1 specifies that Jehovah's dedicated servants can be guests in his figurative tent by cultivating a close personal relationship with him. Note that it specifies dedicated servants. This is loaded language. Thought control. Use of loaded language in cliches which constrict knowledge, stop critical thoughts, and reduce complexities into platitudinous buzzwords. In Watchtower lingo, dedicated does not just mean someone who is committed to their Watchtower obligations, their Christian lifestyle, regularly giving of their time, heart, and resources. To them, all of that doesn't matter unless that individual is baptized. In Watchtower lingo, dedicated means baptized. So the article saying here that only the dedicated baptized can be guests of Jehovah, enjoying a close relationship, applies pressure to anyone in the audience, parents with unbaptized children, teenagers, Bible students, because without that requirement, without that dedication of baptism, they can't be guests of Jehovah. Behavior control. Rewards and punishments used to modify behaviors, both positive and negative. Emotional control. Instill fear, such as fear of losing one's salvation. Thought control. Require members to internalize the group's doctrine as reality. Organize people into us versus them, insiders versus outsiders. In paragraph 2, it assumes or speculates that when mentioning Jehovah's tent, the psalmist David may have been thinking of the tabernacle. Who's to know? Paragraph 3 then says that most Israelites were never allowed to serve at the tabernacle. But the paragraph then says that some concessions are going to be made for Jehovah's figurative tent. So it's not a one-by-one comparison that David was making. So we're assuming. Subheading 1. Walk faultlessly and practice what is right. Immediately, this is demand for purity. Demand for purity is one of Dr. Robert J. Lifton's 8 criteria for thought reform. Here's a brief explanation of this by cult expert Rick Allen Ross.
Then there is the demand for purity, which is the demand that a person divide their entire life into black and white, the pure and the impure. There are no shades of gray, no middle ground.
Paragraph 4 quotes Psalms 15:2, "The one who is walking faultlessly, practicing what is right." And it says that walking and practicing imply action that is both constant and progressive. I'd like to add never ending. According to this, your salvation doesn't have to do with your belief in Jesus being the Lord and Savior and dying for your sins. No, it depends on your doing your best to obey Jehovah by adhering to Watchtower standards, because Jehovah views us as walking faultlessly if we do our best to obey him. Behavior control. Instill dependency and obedience. Getting baptized is the beginning of the journey. Just like merely belonging to the nation of Israel would not automatically qualify a person to be a guest of Jehovah. In order to qualify nowadays to be one of Jehovah's guests in his figurative tent, you must do more than just be baptized. Paragraph 5 says that walking faultlessly and practicing what is right mean more than regularly sharing in some activities at a place of worship. You must strive to obey God in every aspect of your life, even in relatively minor matters, because baptism to Jehovah's Witnesses is more than a symbolic acceptance of Jesus and your willingness to worship the Lord. To Jehovah's Witnesses, it's dedicating your life to do Watchtower's bidding. One of the questions asked at baptism is if you recognize that this baptism identifies you as one of Jehovah's Witnesses. You must do more. Just being baptized is not enough. Just showing up to worship activities is also not enough. This is an emotional, abusive manipulation tactic called moving the goalpost. Moving the goalpost is when a person essentially changes the rules of a situation midway through in order to prevent the other person from succeeding. This could look like giving additional stipulations needed for success, or highlighting disqualifying elements to your success. A manipulator uses this tactic to keep the other person in a constant state of chasing their approval. And paragraph 6 does just that. It says that past acts of faithfulness alone do not qualify us to remain a guest. You have to keep rendering whole-souled worship down to the end, down to your last breath. You must be constantly seeking that approval, earning that salvation. Subheading 2, speak the truth in your heart. Paragraph 7, the Watchtower wants you to begin policing your thoughts and the inner person of the heart. It's beneficial for a manipulator or gaslighter to keep their target unsure of themselves, their own thoughts, actions, perception of reality. This way, they become the only one you can trust. You begin to trust them more than yourself. This is true for many Jehovah's Witnesses, including those being told here to police their inner thoughts in order to remain an approved guest. Thought control. Encourage only good and proper thoughts. Encourage spying on other members. Report deviant thoughts, feelings, and actions to leadership. It then says that Jehovah hates a devious person. Paragraph 8 says, those who speak truth in their heart do not pretend to be obedient in public while breaking God's law in secret. Interesting.
Now, does the governing body, or do the members of the governing body, do you see yourselves as modern-day disciples, the modern-day equivalent of Jesus' disciples?
We certainly hope to follow Jesus and be his disciples.
And do you see yourselves as Jehovah God's spokespeople on earth?
That, I think, would seem to be quite presumptuous to say that we are the only spokesperson that God is using.
If you're unfamiliar with the origin of that clip, that was governing body member Jeffrey Jackson, one of the faithful discreet slave, anointed by Holy Spirit and chosen from the entire history of all humankind to be one of the 144,000 that are in a special covenant and will rule as kings and priests alongside Jesus in heaven. That's him, Jeffrey Jackson. Yes, and that was him denying that special position under oath at the Australian Royal Commission's investigation of religious organizations and abuse and care. Would this not be devious, dishonest behavior? Is that not dishonesty and deviousness? Asking for a friend. Paragraph 9 mentions that Jesus' first impression of Nathanael was that he was a man free of deceit, unlike Jeffrey Jackson, one of the men taking the lead of the Watchtower organization. Paragraphs 10 through 13 were particularly triggering to me. Granted, it's speaking of slander in this article, which can be harmful, but Anyone who's been a Jehovah's Witness or disclosed domestic violence or CSA to an elder body knows that speaking out beyond the elders would be seen as bringing reproach to Jehovah's name. The intent of the Australian Royal Commission and most recently the Royal Commission of New Zealand's investigations into abuse and care, they set out to identify if different organizations, not just Jehovah's Witnesses, have safeties and checks in place to keep minors safe. The Watchtower organization used the average everyday Jehovah's Witnesses donation money to fight in court that they, out of all of the other organizations investigated, should be excluded. It wouldn't have cost them anything but time to cooperate. And being an organization of God's clean chosen people, wouldn't cooperating and showing they do things Jehovah's way and have nothing to hide have been a powerful witness and testimony for Jehovah's name? No. Instead, the Watchtower lost their exclusion appeal and thousands of dollars in donation money. They were investigated, and the detailed conclusion of the findings is linked in the description below. Content warning: there were detailed and disturbing testimony given by very brave survivors. This is an excerpt of the conclusion. Several factors within the faith increased the risk of abuse occurring during the inquiry period, including the status of elders and the power and influence they exercised, particularly over children and young people. The faith had high barriers to the disclosure of abuse, making it more difficult for individuals to disclose any abuse, either to others within the faith or to secular authorities. These barriers included the inferior position of women within the faith, rigid disclosure processes, the fear of being shunned. Paragraphs 10 through 13 perpetuate a culture of silence. So, sadly, some Jehovah's Witness, a victim right now, is sitting in the audience hearing this. Says, misusing our speech in such ways could cause serious harm to others and disqualify us from being guests in Jehovah's tent. Paragraph 11 says unrepentant slanderers are removed from the Christian congregation. These are the barriers that they're talking about. Those passages could be a victim whose abuser was repentant and thus saw no consequences or justice. A victim who's speaking out against their abuser, who, again, saw no consequences or justice for their actions. A victim who could be trying to inform the congregation of a predator, inform parents to beware of a certain brother or sister. This could be slander, according to this.
And number 5, cultivate modesty, so you're an example to others. We show we're modest when we do not demand our own rights.
Paragraph 13, we could unintentionally defame someone by spreading negative information, possibly also accurate information, a true account of what happened to you. Compartmentalize information into information control. Compartmentalize information into outsider versus insider doctrines. Allow only leadership to decide who needs to know what and when. Emotional control. Instill fear, such as fear of losing one's salvation, leaving or being shunned by the group, others' disapproval. Subheading 3. Honor those who fear Jehovah. Paragraph 4 quotes Psalms 15:4 and just all the flags. All the flags. Psalms 15:4 says, a friend of Jehovah rejects anyone who is contemptible. Behavior control. Dictate where, how, and with whom the member lives and associates or isolates. Discourage individualism, encourage groupthink. According to this paragraph, we should reject those whom Jehovah finds contemptible, those who unrepentantly practice what is bad, disrespect our faith and beliefs, or try to undermine our spirituality. Thought control. Rejection of rational analysis, critical thinking, constructive criticism. Forbid critical questions about leader, doctrine, or policy allowed. This is another of Dr. Robert J. Lifton's 8 criteria for thought reform. This one in particular is dispensing of existence. And again, here is a short clip of cult expert Rick Allen Ross explaining this tactic.
Dispensing of existence. And that is literally the right to exist. The person who leaves the group ceases to exist. If they come back, they can exist again. Family and friends that question the group, you can cut them off.
This type of insular nature minimizes and discourages access to non-cult resources of information, including internet, TV, radio, books, articles, newspapers, magazines, media, critical information, former members. Keep members busy so they don't have time to think and investigate. Paragraph 15 goes back to what I was saying earlier about a culture of silence. It says, breaking our promises could surely hurt others. Jehovah expects his guests to live up to their marriage vow. Our love for God and for neighbor will compel us to keep our... You hear that, battered Jehovah's Witness spouses? Jehovah's approval of you depends on you staying in your unhappy marriage. Because you can't be a guest in his house if you don't keep your word, which includes your marriage vows. Behavior control. Dictate when, how, and with whom the member has sex. Permission required for major decisions. Yep, maybe you're unsafe in your marriage. Maybe you're scared every time you go home from the meeting. But Jehovah says that you need to keep your word, or you can't be a guest in his figurative tent. You're risking your salvation by even considering a divorce, according to the Watchtower Bible Tract Society. Paragraph 16, leisure time spent with our brothers and sisters helps us to strengthen bonds of friendship. Again, this is dictating with whom the member associates, contributing to that insular nature and echo chamber. An abuser will use isolation as a manipulation tactic. Isolation is a common control tactic. It cuts us off from our support networks, people who might otherwise be able to help us recognize the abuse and leave. That's the real reason they don't want you to look at apostate material or be friends with people of the world. Because if they knew things that were happening behind closed doors, they might encourage you to seek safety, to leave your dangerous spouse, to report that parent to CPS or the police. Watchtower doesn't want that. That brings reproach. In other words, it tarnishes their image. Subheading 4, remain free from love of money. There's no real bite model in paragraph 17 and 18, just double standards. If the Watchtower weren't involved in real estate schemes, I wouldn't be commenting on these 2 paragraphs at all. Linked in the description are a few videos by other ex-Jehovah's Witnesses who go into detail about different ways Watchtower makes money that the average Jehovah's Witness knows nothing about. Final subheading, Jehovah loves his friends. Paragraph 19 says, the main objective behind God's requirements is Jehovah wants to control us. That's not what it says. The main objective behind God's requirements, Jehovah wants us to be happy. Paragraph 20 wraps the article up nicely with some light phobia indoctrination. It says that Jehovah's approved guests, again, you must be approved, you must qualify, you must work tirelessly to remain approved and remain a guest. So Jehovah's approved guests can look forward to a bright future. The faithful anointed will have admission into the many dwelling places that Jesus prepared for them in heaven. And those with an earthly hope look forward to their earthly hope. Phobia indoctrination. Inculcating irrational fears about leaving the group or questioning the leader's authority. No happiness or fulfillment possible outside the group. Terrible consequences if you leave. Shunning of those who leave. Fear of being rejected by friends and family. Never a legitimate reason to leave. Those who leave are weak, undisciplined, unspiritual, worldly, brainwashed by family or counselor, or seduced by money, sex, or rock and roll. So that brings us to the end of the article. Let's tally up the score. We have 7 for behavior control, 3 for information control, 3 for thought control, and 3 for emotional control. That's a total of 7,333, a number that's equal to only 0.92% of the asking price of this luxury apartment building being sold by the Watchtower Secret Real Estate Company, or rather their charity. Thank you so much for watching. Again, please give this video a like. It helps the information get out to more people. And leave a comment because I love hearing from you and I do my best to reply. Continue thinking freely, Black Sheep. Now, on to housekeeping or updates. Since I've had a few people ask about Patreon and memberships for YouTube, it's something that I'm unfamiliar with, and I'm going to give it some consideration. I started this channel out of my desire to help others and to add my 2 cents to the now plethora of XJW YouTube channels. One thing I know for certain is I'll never have paywall locked content that's related to Watchtower, because I hope anyone searching and brave enough to question their beliefs will have access to resources aiding them towards freedom. Unlike Watchtower, I will be fully honest about my situation. I've invested about $500 total in this channel, including cost of a camera, which I'll use for lives, my microphone, my windscreen, the annual subscription to the editing software for my videos. And this cost has caused no stress on my family or budget. Anything monetary from those who feel so inclined will just line my happy little apostate pockets. Like I said, I'm still brainstorming on what would be appropriate benefits for those who want to join to make it worth their while. So keep an eye on my community tab for updates. Either way, I appreciate you all, and I'm grateful to be able to even have a small part in helping you, whether you're physically in, mentally out, physically in, mentally questioning, physically out, mentally in, or free and just keeping your critical thinking skills sharp. I'm just happy to be part of your journey. Like always, continue thinking freely, Black Sheep, and I'll see you next week.